Hello and welcome to our second webinar from our virtual event series of OneAquaHealth project. My name is Alexander Nikolov and I'm working for Senior GmbH based in Vienna, and we are coordinating the dissemination and communication work package. The purpose of these online gatherings is twofold. Firstly, to disseminate the valuable knowledge we have acquired during our project, and secondly, to engage with a broader network of interesting parties. This includes specialists in personal health, urban environmental health, and the rehabilitation of water habits, as well as policymakers and innovators from all over Europe and beyond. We aim to gather more insights about the unmet needs and potential areas for innovation within this sector and incorporate this new information into our ongoing project. Within the next 90 minutes, we will introduce the OneAquaHealth project to the audience and provide concise overview of some of its relevant actions. The agenda will continue with a contribution by Dr. Garrity, representing the IEEE Engineering in Medicine Biology Society on the role of Geographic Information Systems for tackling climate and community health challenges. Next, Professor Eleni Kukanau from Hellenic Mediterranean University will present on the role of geospatial technologies in community and urban health based on findings from Heraklion in central Crete. The event will culminate with an open discussion to which we kindly invite all participants in the webinar. Finally, the webinar should end at 4:30. Before we continue with our today's agenda, I would like to highlight our today's housekeeping rules. Namely, our virtual event will be recorded and posted on the OneAquaHealth Open Information Hub in order to ensure, according to the rules of open access scientific information, that all collected insights are openly accessible for all interested parties and can support further development activities in the field. Feel free to ask questions anytime in the chat option. We'll do our best to answer them during the event. And if you would like to speak after the presentations, please raise your virtual hand. So that being said, I would like to present you shortly OneAquaHealth project and its great activities and goals. The project OneAquaHealth is a research and innovation action funded by the European Horizon Research and Innovation Program with a duration of 4 years and budget of almost 5 million euros. The background of the project goes back to the role of, yes, we're recording at the moment. The background of the project goes back to the role of urban aquatic ecosystems as extremely relevant connections between people, animals, and plants, making cities more biodiverse and sustainable. Yet these ecosystems are often degraded, which can lead to the emergence of pathogens, decrease in disease resistance, climate change impacts on health and health concerns in the cities. So against this background, OneAquaHealth project seeks to protect and restore urban freshwater ecosystems and human health by designing and developing AI-assisted tools to identify early warning indicators and enhance environmental monitoring. The project will develop digital tools, an environmental surveillance system, a decision support system, and a citizen science app to raise awareness and engage all relevant stakeholders who will collect and analyze data, provide recommendations, and raise awareness and engagement. Last but not least, OneAquaHealth will fill the knowledge gaps and improve the policies for managing aquatic cities. To achieve these ambition aims, the project consortium brings together 13 partners and practitioners working in the areas of ecology and biodiversity, freshwater ecosystem, ecological assessment, human health and public health, veterinary, social sciences, humanities, digital health, and informatic engineering. The project follows a challenging interdisciplinary approach that crosses, as mentioned, various sciences and is based on the achievement of the following objective. OneAquaHealth seeks to understand the links between the health of aquatic ecosystems and human health, and based on the collected insights to identify the level of their integrity. It further aims to determine the environmental parameters that would allow predicting disease outbreak risk related to aquatic ecosystem degradation and may constitute warning indicators. Additionally, observation data for monitoring early warning indicators collected by various sources, such as, among others, satellite imagery, will be integrated into an environmental surveillance system to support decision makers to act upon early warnings. OneAquaHealth will design and develop decision support system to deliver clear and complete information arising from the project activities. Dashboards available on the Open Information Hub as the main communication channel of the project will be created to visualize the aggregated information. Last but not least, OneAquaHealth will seek to engage stakeholders to contribute to the early warning system by developing a citizen app and developing innovation dissemination actions. So the technical solutions are the cornerstone of the project, as they will be essential to the expected new policy and societal outcomes. With the development of the predictive models, OneAquaHealth project seeks to run scenarios for different conditions. With the integration into the hub, the project aims to facilitate the interpretation by decision makers and thus enhance their capacity to detect environmental changes. OneAquaHealth decision support system will provide alerts, notifications, and appropriate recommendations to cover the status of ecosystem health that allows the mitigation or elimination of risks of their degradation for human health. To showcase the results using smart infographics and data visualization, the project will develop city dashboards, which will be accessible over the OneAquaHealth Open Information Hub. The city dashboards aim to enable citizens and public institutions to access and manage Earth observation, analytics, statistics, and early warning preventive services. As already touched upon in previous slides, the project will also seek to design and develop a mobile application for environmental observation, which will enable citizens and public institutions to provide and access data and statistics through optimized search graph and visualizations. And finally, the project implemented already an Open Information Hub, which constitutes the project platform. As such, it will contain all the project information and allow the visualization of outputs and support tools for decision making. The project uses a research cities approach to involve citizens in science, testing the project tools and getting feedback on them, and spreading using the project results. OneAquaHealth works in 5 research cities in the urban areas of Coimbra in Portugal, Toulouse in France, Benevento in Italy, southwestern Flanders in Belgium, and Oslo in Norway. These sites have different climatic areas, cultural backgrounds, and experiences in protecting and restoring rivers. At each research site, around approximately 20 sampling sites are planned in streams and small rivers covering urbanization gradients, which will allow detailed analysis of potential improvements through pressure reduction and mitigating of human health risks. Regarding the expected outcomes, OneAquaHealth will seek to have a significant contribution to the establishment of better insights into the use of environmental observation in the large domain of OneAquaHealth and enhance capacity to trace environmental parameter changes on how they impact on the emergence of diseases. By designing and developing innovative digital solutions, the project will implement monitoring of the ecosystems over the long term and enable decision makers act faster and maintain the integrity of the aquatic ecosystems. The project will further enhance the understanding of the emergence and tackling the spread of new infectious diseases, as well as facilitate better insights into the concepts of alert and early warning systems. So that being said, I would like to pass the floor to our first presentation by Dr. Presentation from your computer.
I just want to say hello and give you a big thank you. I really appreciate having this opportunity to talk to you today about how Geographic Information Systems, GIS technology, is really critical to addressing this topic of OneAquaHealth. And I thought that that introduction that Alexandra gave was so relevant, because I think you will see in my presentation that GIS can support all of the different components of this work. And I think you'll also see that I'm pretty passionate about this technology and this area of OneAquaHealth. I hope I'll convey that. So the way that I want to go about this is I'm going to start with a brief introduction, and then I'm going to share several examples of applied GIS so you can really see how it's working in different scenarios. And I've roughly categorized those examples into issues of water availability and issues of water quality. And at the end, I'll share a few resources in case you do feel inspired to incorporate these geographic methods into your work. So, why geography? Well, actually, if you didn't know, geography is a very powerful way to approach problem solving. Because everything happens somewhere, geography is almost always a part of our data. And that where or location component gives us this fundamental language that we can use to organize our data and illuminate patterns and relationships within the data. It allows us to look broadly, or you might say holistically, at our world, even as if it's a single ecosystem, which of course it is an ecosystem. And you would basically call this a systems science approach that can both account for complex interactions as well as help us avoid those unintended consequences that can happen when we focus too narrowly in our analyses. So in that perspective, maybe it's almost the opposite of bench science approaches. Now, health as its own topic certainly has its own ecosystem, and you could really represent this in a million different ways. I've represented the health infrastructure and workforce, the social dimensions that impact health, and the environmental context to which people are exposed, whether that's for better or for worse. And I have to tell you that every time I look at this health ecosystem diagram, I think back to some of my courses in public health where I learned about the epidemiologic triad, which is, of course, a tool used in health to consider the interplay among multiple factors that can lead to disease or to injury. The triad includes an agent causing the disease, a susceptible host, and an environment where those things interact. Now, whether the agent is a virus like measles, the impact of extreme heat, or maybe even the forces involved in a motor vehicle accident, geography plays a crucial role in understanding those interactions by bringing together all the contextual factors that define the environmental component. And I have to say, it's really not too dissimilar to a model that this group would know very well, the One Health model. Again, it's all about what the interactions are and where they take place. And I have to tell you, it hasn't been until relatively recently, like maybe the last 10 to 15 years, that there was a technology out there that was able to cope with this level of complexity in understanding how environmental or the contextual part of the equation really works. The main point of this slide that I'm showing you is really to emphasize that GIS technology is able to do this because it's more than a map. And I say that because there are still lots and lots of people out there who understand GIS as only a map-making technology, but in fact, it is much more. There are tools, for example, within a GIS to help with data collection and then understanding what's going on through analysis and visualization. You might not be aware, but there are over 1,000 analytic tools within a GIS. There are also tools for modeling and predicting or forecasting and planning as you design and then prioritize your interventions. You can use GIS to make better data-informed decisions and take action. And of course, these tools also support your impact evaluation and stakeholder communication processes as well. So let me start by showing you a few examples to highlight the work of several GIS users that I really do hope you'll find relevant to your OneAquaHealth work. So let's start with World Vision. In Rwanda, this organization leads with innovation and compassion, embracing their mantra, dangerously soft-hearted, but just the right kind of dangerous. And I have to say, I love that mantra. Their mission is to ensure that everyone has access to water, sanitation, and hygiene, which represents, of course, a cornerstone of Sustainable Development Goal 6. Their mission is powered by what is honestly a groundbreaking approach using satellite imagery, machine learning, and GIS to reveal remote communities that were once invisible on maps. Let me liken it to the saying by French mathematician René Descartes, who coined the philosophical phrase, "I think, therefore I am." In today's more practical world, it's more like, "I'm on the map, therefore I am." There are places in the world where individuals like Taness and her baby, shown here, they live in obscurity because they are unmapped. But high-resolution population data combined with advanced Earth observation transforms how we understand and address the existence of populations and then assess water access disparities. In Rwanda, their detailed mapping refines population density information. It pinpoints precise locations for water collection. It creates then accessibility buffers around those points and then clarifies where the gaps exist so that interventions can be properly targeted. World Vision's efforts embody the principle of visibility as a precursor to action, transforming lives really by ensuring that no one is left behind in the quest for water. Okay, well, early in the COVID-19 pandemic, the US Surgeon General, at that time it was Jerome Adams, noted, "We tell people to wash their hands, but as studies showed, 30% of the homes on Navajo Nation don't have running water. So how are they going to do that?" Thus began the mission of the Indian Health Service to improve water access to the Navajo Nation. Now, for this project, GIS was deployed in a number of different ways. GIS, for example, helped in evaluating home data using digital community assessment questionnaires that they could put on their cell phones or on tablets. And they were also using these kinds of tools to survey existing water point locations. Locals could really easily be trained with these digital survey tools, and that allowed them to be a part of the process. Alexander was talking earlier about citizen science, and this is a part of that in this use case. Now, GIS was also used in this case to promote public communication efforts and monitor the entire process and the outcomes with map-based dashboards. Now, here's what they were able to accomplish. They increased the number of safe water points by 59 additional locations. That really changed things. For those that had to travel to get water, the burden of travel decreased significantly. So instead of an average of 52 miles round trip, it improved to only 17 miles round trip on average for the whole population. Tens of thousands of safe storage containers were provided so that people could easily move that water. And everything was shared with the community through maps and applications that made things like locating that nearest water point super easy. Now, my next example is around water availability and is related to climate change and extreme weather impacts. As you can imagine, a geographic approach is absolutely necessary to do this kind of work. Many cities, like Prague in Czech Republic, are using GIS to identify heat pockets, some would say urban heat islands, that exist really as microclimates within these cities. Once those heat pockets are identified, the next step that many different health departments are taking is to pinpoint where are the vulnerable populations to illuminate those areas of highest risk and potential disparity. Now, immediate interventions might be actually very simple and very effective. So take, for example, this Cool Spots LA resource locator that is aiming to help people cool off when it gets too hot. Los Angeles, California is basically listing nearby pools and splash pads, libraries, recreation centers, and hydration stations. They put all of this in an app so that anyone can access it. Now, as extreme heat may lead to longer-term drought, we can map the places, for example, where drought intersects with the most vulnerable populations to assess risk for food insecurity due to crop failures, mental stresses, and an increase in drought-loving disease vectors such as Powassan virus causing neuroinvasive disease, chikungunya fever with resulting rash and muscle pain, vibriosis, much feared for its flesh-eating consequences, Chagas disease leading to long-term heart failure, and valley fever with its flu-like respiratory symptoms. GIS can really help us to understand where the risk is. That's a common theme that I'll say over and over again. But that knowing allows us to take steps to educate populations, train physicians on things they may have never seen before, and allocate resources that will improve our overall response and resilience to these different threats. Now, sometimes climate impacts take us in exactly the opposite direction, right? Where we have too much water. This map was created by NOAA in the US, and it's showing coastal inundation areas that need to be watched. Now, we can use things like data from NOAA to get real-time weather information and track things like hurricanes and anticipate what their impact could be on the healthcare delivery system, so we can, of course, get out in front of the crisis. And we can use geography to understand the habitats of water-loving disease vectors like mosquitoes. In this clip that you're seeing, there's a set of rules for, in this case, the Aedes mosquito species and their habitat suitability. Those rules that are on the right-hand side of the application are including things like how much precipitation would be ideal for this species, what are its elevation limits, and which kinds of land cover varieties do they really prefer. With that information, and let's say we even overlay population information on top of that, we can now predict where infections related to Aedes mosquitoes like dengue fever, Zika virus, and chikungunya are most likely to occur on a global basis. And actually, we can even do better. We can look at the seasonality of when that would happen, because of course, some places will have a year-round threat. I'm showing South America here, they certainly do. And then other places around the world, a little bit further north, have more of a seasonal threat for these kinds of mosquitoes. And of course, that has a lot to do with climate, right? And we can use climate change models, this one predicting climate to 2050 in the future, to see how habitats may expand over time. Again, this gives us a lot of options for how we will do things like train physicians or move resources around for new threats in new areas. We can even do things like look at how land cover is expected to change in the next 30 years. In this case, we can see the Tampa, Florida metropolitan area that's shown in red on the left-hand side of the state, and we can see how it's going to expand toward the center of the state. What that's going to do is bring humans into contact with an area that is grassy and swampy and prevalent with mosquitoes. These maps, again, help us plan and address mosquito abatement issues in a proactive way. While water availability issues are certainly relevant to human health, so too, of course, is water quality. And a geographic approach for that is also useful. Now, you may be aware of some very serious human rights violations that have occurred in Myanmar against the Rohingya people. Nearly 700,000 Rohingyans fled the country, taking refuge right across the border in Bangladesh. More than 600,000 of them ended up in a sprawling mega settlement. This is a refugee camp, right? And it was built in just 5 months, mostly with materials like bamboo and tarpaulins. The circumstances there are already dire. And so a key priority is to prevent things from getting any worse with new and compounding emergencies. They're using GIS to fully understand the physical environment of the settlement so they can take appropriate actions. With GIS, here's some of what they've done. They've measured the crowding in the camps, which, as you can imagine, is a risk factor for several things, for a number of infectious diseases. for stunted growth in children, and certainly for mental stresses. They've reviewed the locations, this one's a little gross, right, of latrines and their proximity to the water sources. Some of them are within 10 meters because they're trying to really determine the risk for contamination that would result in difficult to manage outbreaks like cholera. And then all of this is really considered alongside climate impacts, again, where in this case, monsoon season could lead to landslides and floods that would devastate these sites and basically isolate them because they become inaccessible. So it's really critical to understand the contextual pressures and the basic human needs to be able to fully address them. Water quality is, of course, an issue all around the world. In Salinas County, California, efficient water management is critical due to the area's heavy reliance on local groundwater, which is threatened. It's threatened by overpumping and by saltwater intrusion. So effective stormwater management here helps protect water quality by controlling runoff and reducing pollutants, which is essential to supporting the densely populated and agriculturally intensive region. So Salinas has implemented GIS technologies that integrate geographic data with urban planning tools to track and improve water quality measures. GIS is aiding in creating efficient workflows for regulatory compliance, monitoring best management practices, and analyzing that stormwater runoff and pollution, helping them then make data-informed decisions and effectively communicate with the public about all of their water management efforts. It's actually been really good PR for the county. Our next example involves algal blooms, which can produce toxins that are harmful to humans, to fish, and to marine life, leading to illness and environmental degradation. Now, in this situation, GIS has been used to analyze satellite imagery, looking at it over time so that they can look at different patterns, like of chlorophyll, for example, and different trends in bloom occurrences. And they can monitor, again, the water quality and predict outbreaks based on these different environmental conditions. Being able to intervene in a timely fashion improves the management of critical water resources. And in this last example that I have for you, I really wanted to talk a little bit about wastewater testing, which is a pretty efficient and happily kind of passive way to monitor population health risks. And I know it became really popular during the pandemic, but this is an effort that's been around for more than 50 years. But GIS is actually being used for it quite a lot more nowadays. For example, it's being used to select which of the water sites should be tested. And that may be at the water treatment plant or upstream or downstream of it, depending on what's going on in that environment. And GIS is doing a lot more than that. So for example, the state of Missouri used GIS to share the results of their wastewater testing for SARS-CoV-2 viral shedding. They showed the trends over time for each testing location, and they even mapped the genetic variants of COVID-19. So really anyone could track what was going on from week to week. I found it fascinating to see when things changed over from the Delta variant to the Omicron variant. And you could see very clearly where that was happening across their state. But we can really focus in even more. This example comes from the University of California in San Diego. Their wastewater testing was done at the building level for COVID-19, and their efforts allowed them to safely get students back to campus faster than most universities, because once they had a positive test for a building, they had integrated automatic emails that went out asking everybody in that building to be tested and stay away until they had results. It worked actually really beautifully for them. And this dashboard from the city of Tempe, Arizona, really presents an interesting use case. Now, they've been doing wastewater testing since like 2015 for opioid drugs and their metabolites, right? That's important so that you can get a sense of what medicines are being poured down a drain versus what's being excreted by the body. And they're using this data to monitor the entire drug situation in their city, like which opioids are being used the most. Are there changes in that? Do they need to do something different? They're also targeting response efforts as well, working with the police, the emergency management personnel, community partners, and the University of Arizona to reduce harm from opioid misuse. And it went really fast for me. I don't know about for you, but I told you a lot of stories, and I hope that I've emphasized at least the idea that a geospatial approach has great value in OneAquaHealth, but also that GIS is actually more than a map. It's a robust information system that supports data collection, analysis, visualization, and information sharing to solve some of the most complex problems of our day. Now, as promised, here are some resources to get you started if you do have the interest. I have first this free health-focused GIS curriculum, so you can really get your hands on the software and all of the various applications that a team and myself have deemed to be most relevant to health use cases. So you can learn the workflows, you can learn the tools, and again, it's all free, and they're in like 30-minute to 2-hour chunks, so very reasonable to do when you have that downtime. Now, of course, if you want to do that, you're going to need access to the software. You can go for a free trial. We have those available, and I'm providing the link. And you could also get a low-cost personal use license. Those are good for an entire year. And you also will need data to work with. Of course, you can use your own, and there's lots of open data out there, but I wanted to make sure that you were aware of the Living Atlas of the World. This is data that is open data, more than 10,000 data sets. It's already geo-enabled. It comes from authoritative organizations from around the globe. So it's a great place to start searching for some of the data that you might need. And it's not just health, it covers all sorts of things. And again, because this is an interconnected field that you're working in, you're going to want that different kind of data. I also, of course, will leave you with my contact information should you have any questions or would like to learn more. And as I understand it, we're going to go through the presentations and then we can have a discussion, which I look forward to. So I will end for now and pass it off to Professor.
Hello to all of you. My name is Eleni Kokinu, and I am professor at the Hellenic Mediterranean University in Crete, Greece. I have expertise in earth and environmental science, and I'm honored to be here today to share my insights with you regarding the role of geospatial technologies in community and urban health. Let's start. Next slide, please. Let's start this short presentation by explaining the meaning of geospatial, that is any data indicated by or related to a geographic location. The geospatial technology is a term used to describe the range of modern tools contributing to the geographic mapping and analysis of Earth and human societies. A variety of types of geospatial technology potentially applicable to community need include the following. Geographic Information Systems, as they already gave all the explanations about GIS. However, GIS is a suite of software tools for mapping and analyzing georeferenced data. And GIS can be used to detect geographic patterns in other data, for example, disease clusters resulting from toxins. GNSS, this is the global positioning system that provides precise coordinate locations to civilian and military users with proper receiving equipment. Some examples of satellite networks are the well-known GPS of US Department of Defense, the similar European system Galileo, the Russian system called GLONASS, the Chinese system called Combats by 2, and the Indian IRNSS. Next slide, please. Earth observation is achieved by no, the previous, excuse me, the previous slide. Alexander, okay. Earth observation is achieved by remote sensing. Data are collecting from space or airborne camera and sensor platforms nowadays with very high spatial resolution. Scanning uses lasers, radars, and lidars. LiDAR uses laser pulses to measure distances and create 3D maps, while radar uses radio waves to detect and track objects. LiDAR offers higher spatial resolution and accuracy, while radar provides a longer range and better performance in adverse weather conditions. Internet technologies, that is software programs like Google Earth and web features like Microsoft Virtual Earth, are changing the way geospatial data is viewed and shared. The developments in user interface are also making such technologies available to a wider audience. And now, please, next slide. And some examples regarding geospatial technologies. At the top left, you can see the basic functioning of GPS, while at the bottom left, how GPS receiver locates satellites and thus determines the coordinates and altitude. On the right, you can see an orthomosaic and the corresponding topographical relief of an area where you used a drone. And next slide, please. More examples. On the left, you can see water sampling in an urban stream and the GPS location, while on the right you can see conductivity mapping in an agricultural field near to a stream. We used the sensor GEM2 for mapping of the conductivity and the GPS. Next slide, please. Here are some typical examples of the use of geodata technology. Military geodata technology is used for military use, logistic, tracking goods and ensuring their quality, transport, identified place and time of arrival, route planning and navigation. For environmental issues regarding spreading of forest fires, the rate of ocean warming, mapping of the seabed changes in the coastline, tracking of weather events such as hurricanes or floods, volcanic eruptions, expansion of cities, land use, for meteorological issues, for weather forecasts, in agriculture for assessment of the condition of vegetation, public health issues, monitoring area with epidemic outbreaks, the well-known example of COVID-19 global pandemic, ecological issues, tracking species populations, marketing and advertising, real estate for remote visualization and analysis of real estate properties, and finally for insurance for managing risks in questionable areas. Next slide, please. OneAquaHealth project focuses on healthy streams. Why? Because streams, especially urban, provide clean water for drinking, agriculture, recreation, and industry, help filter pollutants from storm water and anthropogenic activities flowing into the stream. They provide habitat for wildlife and assist citizens in physical activity strongly related to mental health, particularly in situations of depression. And next slide, please. And in the next slides, I will present you the application of geospatial technologies for 2 case studies in Greece. The first case study is in the area of Peloponnesus, in the center of Peloponnesus in Arcadia, while the second case study is in Heraklion, Crete. Crete is located in the southernmost place of Europe, and both studies strongly consider the detection of heavy metals using geospatial technologies. Heavy metals in small quantities are necessary for maintaining good health, but in larger quantities they become toxic or dangerous. Heavy metal toxicity can lower energy levels and affect the function of the brain, lungs, kidneys, liver, blood composition, and other major organs. Long-term exposure can lead to gradually progressive physical, muscular, and neurological degenerative processes that mimic diseases such as multiple sclerosis, Parkinson, Alzheimer's disease, and muscular dystrophy. Repeated long-term exposure to some metals and their compounds can even cause cancer. And the next slide, please. Case study 1 focuses on the environmental study for pollution in the area of Megalopoli lignite power plant in Peloponnesus. On the left, you can see satellite imagery from Google Earth showing the wider area of interest. The town of Megalopolis, you can also see the town of Megalopolis, the power plant, and the mines. And to the right, you can see a topography map of the region around the power plant. The Megalopolis basin comprises an almost flat area with slopes mainly ranging between 0 and 25%, showing an extended drainage network. The river is called Alfiose River. And next slide, please. What is the main purpose of this study? to investigate the suitability of magnetic properties in correlation to geochemical measurements as a pollution monitoring tool, and to study the metal transmission factors in an area around a major local source, namely the lignite burning power plant. On the right, you can see maps showing the distributions of magnetic properties of the soils strongly related to the presence of heavy metals. Next slide, please. And some results regarding case study 1, we found that the main transmission factors in the area are the drainage network, the Alpheus River, and the wind, and high values of magnetic susceptibility oriented northwest, south, southeast. That is the orientation of the that wind blows. Magnetic properties of the examined soils agree that the metal pollution reveals high values around the quarries and depositories. We found high linear correlation factors between iron and nickel, gallium, rubidium, and yttrium. Then the results of case study 1 generally confirm that magnetic susceptibility measurements provides the basis for environmental studies in polluted areas. And next slide, please. Case study 2 focuses on Earth observation and ground techniques for rapid assessment of stream, soil, and water patterns in 2 streams located in Heraklion, Crete, Greece. Again, you can see maps related to different attributes of the study area. And please, next slide to see the natural environment. On the left, you can see the natural environment of the 2 streams studied, while to the left, you can see the methodology chart where we applied both ground and remote sensing techniques. Ground techniques included study of the topography, the geology, and geophysical measurements of water and soil, while remote sensing techniques included satellite and UAV imagery. UAV is the unmanned aerial vehicles, the well-known drones. And let's see in the next slide, please, some experimental results. These are experimental results related to water sample analysis on the left, while on the right you can see comparison of the impervious density and in the upper part, and the distribution of the magnetic susceptibility in the lower part. Next slide, please. And in this slide, on the left, you see a drone image showing the cultivation response due to heat stress On the right, you can see field mapping to create management zones regarding the agricultural cultivation. This technique is used to protect the environment from agricultural activity and increase the quality and quantity of the production. And the results of this study in the next slide. In this study, we found that topography in this specific area is one of the most important factors that affect the aquatic environment and agriculture. We also found that the combination of the so-called spectral induced polarization method, that is a geophysical method, and magnetic susceptibility is ideal for rapid and cost-effective environmental monitoring. And also we found that intra-parcel variability characterizes that area. And also, a very important conclusion is that topographic attributes such as slope and aspect, impervious density, vegetation indices, soil electrical conductivity, and soil magnetic susceptibility, as well as the spectral induced polarization response of water, are robust indicators for a rapid and cost-effective environmental investigation of rural and suburban areas bordering streams before conducting specific analysis. Next slide, please. And in conclusion of this presentation, geospatial technology is a major scientific discovery that raises the possibility of humanity to a whole new level. The use of geospatial technology is comparatively inexpensive and simple, while its possibilities are almost unlimited. Applications of geospatial technologies can be found in almost all sectors, industries, or research areas where location is important. And what is the future of geospatial technology? Of course, geospatial artificial intelligence, autonomous vehicles, high-resolution mapping as a service, and drones. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Eleni, for the really nice and comprehensive presentation. And now we come to our open discussion round. So the members of our audience are more than welcome to ask the questions to our presenters. If there are no questions so far, I would like to ask you, GIS technologies based on the presentations is a really advanced and wonderful technology, but however, there are some challenges, especially when it comes to its accessibility to remote and under-resourced communities. Could you please share a little bit based on your experience regarding that matter? What are the limitations of these technologies for such communities?
Sure. I could start on that one. So one of the common tools, for example, that people like to use for data collection are our field operation tools that might be Survey 123 or Quick Capture, or a number of other tools where people go out into the field and they may be in a disconnected environment. There also may be workflows where people need to edit data that's already in a system while they're out in the field. That can all be done in a disconnected environment. It doesn't matter. They can still do their work, have that data available to them to edit. And then what happens is when they're back in a connected environment, the tools sync up. So you may be limited. I mean, the environment is the environment, but you can still do the work as long as you're able to sync at some point in the future.
Thank you for the answer. Are there any educational strategies familiar to you in connection to teaching communities about the importance of GIS technologies, for example, in managing water resources?
Yeah, I would love to hear from this group what they think. I mean, let me be frank. At Esri, my function is in marketing and thought leadership. So I'm always wanting to educate everybody about this technology. It's my focus. And since the whole world doesn't already know about it, I'm falling short. So I may not be the best person to answer, but I will say that I think it's important to make messages simple and relevant to communities. Our strategy has always been around storytelling to make things relatable to people, and particularly if you're talking to a lay audience, and getting out there and meeting and talking to people. I mean, sometimes you provide this education one person at a time, and then they tell two people, apparently. I know Gora has an idea. He has his hand raised.
I had a question, actually. First of all, thank you for both of you for excellent presentations. It was very nice. My question for both of you is, what's your perspective, since we live in a digital world where we all are now connected, have devices, specifically looking at the younger generation and their adoption of these digital devices, are you seeing an uptake in terms of using visualization and related technology for their daily use? Yes, we all are using our navigation tools, but are you seeing an uptake on that? And so can you comment on that?
Yeah, I would say from my perspective, definitely. I mean, I know the health market better than other markets, but Esri's been growing year over year. So there's still clearly an uptick in the use of geospatial technologies. But one of the things that I think is particularly interesting when you look at things like dashboards, for example, just about everybody was using the Johns Hopkins COVID-19 dashboard during the height of the pandemic. We can tell you that the majority of people, almost 60%, were doing it on their mobile devices. So it really speaks to the idea that, go mobile first. With Esri technology, if you're configuring an application, you can actually configure it once and it's useful on all devices. But it's just really important to make sure that you're thinking mobile first, because that is the difference that we're seeing in the current generation.
And Professor Eleni, are you seeing that at your college also, students' adoption of the technology? Yeah.
Please,
Okay.
can you repeat?
Yeah, sure.
I'm losing the signal from time to time. Please.
No, as a professor, are you seeing the adoption of GIS technology by college students and the young generation?
Oh, I'm teaching in the Department of Agriculture, and I can ensure you that the students are very interesting in geospatial technologies regarding the use of GIS and remote sensing techniques. We are training the students in Geographic Information Systems here and remote sensing technologies to adapt these techniques in their job later.
Great. In fact, I see on the audience an expert in geospatial technology, specifically satellite imagery, Dr. Singh, Professor Singh from Chapman University is on the call. Professor Singh, if you want to give some comments and observation from your perspective.
Thank you, Gora, and thanks to both of speakers today. Okay, and everybody is talking about the GIS remote sensing. I know since last 45 years, we started working in remote sensing GIS. Okay. People started asking whether the remote sensing can be used for any applications, and this was my answer to the students at that time, that you get the spectral reflectance, and then you can decide about the wavelength. Okay. So here, people, they talked more about the GIS, but the GIS cannot always want should include the ground information, about the remote sensing information. Remote sensing is providing all kinds of data, you see, and also meteorological parameters at the different pressure level. Okay, so yes, it is a very powerful tool, and whatever speaker said about the disease control, about the onset of malaria and things like that. 20 years back, I was involved in the COSPAR organizations, and there we started doing that. Okay, and it has been advanced. But the problem is you have to get data, okay, and the data always. I try to say that hey, the GIS is boring but powerful, because the boring in the sense you have to enter the data. You see, and but now if you know the technology, if you have algorithms, you can forecast and predict based on your training data sets. So thank you very much, Gaurav, for
Sure.
asking me to say it. Okay, thank you.
So in fact, Dr. Singh brings about a very interesting point, which sort of leads to my question. Is today we have devices which have sensors and can take automated measurements without the user really doing anything. And that's become a very powerful aid to the collection of information, which previously was not possible. Previously, yes, it was really laborious and boring, as you rightly said, but today it's really, you don't have to do anything. The data is being automatically collected. I think that powerful feature which we have in today's generation wasn't there previously. And that's why my question is, for the young generation, as they are very versatile with the devices, that they are carrying a power which they may not be aware of. And how do we leverage that in applying for betterment of health, betterment of humanity at large? So yes. So just
let me comment, Gaurav, because as both the speakers said, GIS has a different components. Okay, one is the one should learn the GIS software. The second thing is the one should learn about the data collection in the field from the satellite. Okay, and the third thing is then integrate this data with the GIS tool, okay, to forecast. Okay, so these three components, one should, the young generation should develop the skills to do that, right?
Right. And coming back to health, and I would ask ST to comment, and especially her opening slide had that very nice picture of the human body. And so going from the macro with the satellite and other data to micro, to inside the human body, inside your heart, and using some of those mapping technology which are now becoming, starting to become prevalent. It's really powerful. So we want to talk about some of the work you'll have been doing there.
Sure. Well, it's mostly the work of our users that we try to enable, but I will say I've seen some interesting things when it comes to what you might call micro GIS. Advent Health in Florida is a university hospital that is using GIS to understand tuberculosis granulomas from a pathological perspective, so slides and different staining patterns and what those granulomas look like and their size and any interesting characteristics. So they're actually doing that with GIS and getting NIH grants to pursue that methodology. Then there is a couple of organizations who are using GIS not as geographic, but more as spatial, using more Cartesian coordinate systems to understand the genome and different aspects of that, which I think is fascinating. And they're doing some different kinds, I can't describe it very well, but they're doing some different kinds of discovery to find places with particular genomics that are right for particular interventions, maybe, or resources to be placed there. And then one other thing related sort of to this question, not so much internal to the human body, but modeling the human body with GIS. One of my colleagues was going through occupational therapy, and he has ALS. And when he was first diagnosed, he was starting to lose the ability to grip with his hand. And so he went to occupational therapy, and the way that the therapist went about their business was, do all of this work. And at the end of the session, she would measure like every little angle and, how well the grip was going and put it all in a spreadsheet. And he would look at the spreadsheet and say, I don't know if I'm getting any better, or I can't tell. And it was hard work and it wasn't very motivating. So he actually built an application on a modeling app in GIS. It's called City Engine. And he turned what was a train station in a city into a hand. So all of the platforms became a hand. And he built rules to be able to record all of the angles and measurements from his therapy. And when he animated that over time, you could see that his grip was actually slowly improving. And that motivated him to continue therapy. So it is a one-off, but people are starting to do this kind of work, thinking more spatially than geographically, and what that means for their particular analyses.
Yes, in fact, just yesterday, I saw a post at LinkedIn about somebody's human hand, and there was a projection on the hand, and then it got into doing incision and showing the nerves, and the very fascinating visualization. So yes, we are pushing the boundaries for sure.
Eleni, you raise your hand, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. To Esther, a question as an expert in and representative of of Esri concerning GIS. Esther, could you give us some examples regarding the use of GIS in decision making? This is very important.
Absolutely. So, okay, the one that comes to mind right away is, let's see, I'll think of two. So in the US, there is a county called Milwaukee, and in that county, they are using GIS to improve equity. They were actually the first jurisdiction in the United States to declare racism as a public health crisis. And so they're really focused on trying to improve equity across their county. One of the things that they did that I found particularly interesting was they created a model called Eve, and Eve really compares some parameter that they're looking at against social vulnerability. And social vulnerability, for convenience, they're using the CDC's Social Vulnerability Index, but you could define that in any way that was appropriate for your geography. So they started doing this with COVID-19, looking for how they were going to equitably distribute vaccines or testing. And so they modeled the places that had low vaccination rates against social vulnerability. And so they targeted with GIS the areas that had the highest vulnerability and the lowest vaccination rates. And they used GIS to design the messaging, to move the testing resources, or create pop-up clinics for vaccination in the right places. So they could message better and they could deliver the resources. Then they were so successful with this EVE model that they applied it to all sorts of other things. They've applied it to gun violence and to their ambulance system. And one of the recent ones that they applied it to was harm reduction from opioid overdoses. They have a set of vending machines, not enough, of course, for the whole county, but they're looking at the number of overdoses per small census tract or whatever area versus social vulnerability, to put in these vending machines that have free harm reduction materials like naloxone kits or fentanyl strips. And they're actually doing the same thing in Canada, providing materials for people experiencing homelessness, like socks or water and things like that. So that's just one example of how organizations are using geography to prioritize where is the highest risk, where should they put their resources, how should they message specifically to these groups in these neighborhoods to create a resonant message that is appropriate for that audience. Thanks for that question. That was fun.
Me too. Thank you very much.
All right, guys, any other questions to our presenters? All right, so if you don't have any other questions, we'll move towards the end of our webinar. I would like to invite you to visit our Open Information Hub in order to exploit networking opportunities with our broad project audience, or get in touch with us via our Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn project channels. We're planning many more exciting events and activities, and we'll be happy if you're again part of them, such as the one on the 21st of May, which will be hosted by our dear partners from WiseAngle. The webinar will share experiences and viewpoints on more successful engagement strategies in citizen science projects and the usage of mobile applications. So make sure that you don't miss the event and register to it. The registration is open and accessible on our Open Information Hub. So thank you very much one more time for your attention. We look forward to talking to you and collaborate with you in the near future. Thank you very much, guys. Wish you a nice rest of the day, nice weekend.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.